Okay, so when we look at these huge historical turning points, sometimes the story we think we know, well, it isn't the whole story, or maybe not even accurate. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of those absolutely pivotal moments, the invasion of Poland in 1939. I mean, this is the event that really kicked off World War II. And our goal here is to cut through some of those myths that still hang around. We want to uncover what really happened, separating the popular stories from the documented facts. We'll look at the Polish-German border situation, the whole idea of Polish provocation, and what Poland's actual readiness for war looked like.
Absolutely, because it's so easy for narratives to get cemented even when they're, well, misleading.
Exactly. So let's start with the lead up. There's this long-standing narrative about German demands and Polish stubbornness, even aggression. What was really going on there? Was Germany actually trying to negotiate?
Well, to get the full picture, you really need to go back to the end of World War I. The Treaty of Versailles created the Polish corridor, giving Poland access to the sea, but also cutting off East Prussia from the rest of Germany.
And Danzig.
And the Free City of Danzig, yeah. Mostly German-speaking, under League of Nations supervision. Germany never really accepted these eastern borders. They always wanted them revised. So by late 1938, the German foreign minister Ribbentrop starts making very specific demands. He wanted Danzig back in the Reich, and he wanted these extraterritorial routes.
German highways and railways running through Poland, bypassing Polish control entirely.
Precisely, through the Polish corridor, connecting Germany to East Prussia.
Okay, that sounds pretty demanding. Did
Yeah.
they offer anything in return? Was there any kind of sweetener?
Oh, they presented it as an offer, definitely.
Mm.
Germany said they'd recognize the other borders, extend the non-aggression pact they had with Poland for, I think, 25 years,
Wow, 25 years.
and even offered Poland a free port in Danzig. But critically, they also wanted Poland to join the anti-Comintern pact.
The anti-Soviet alliance with Germany, Japan, Italy. Okay. So, on the surface, maybe some parts sound tempting. Why did Poland say no? It sounds like they had serious reservations.
They absolutely did. The Polish leadership saw right through it. They were deeply afraid that accepting these terms would basically turn Poland into a German puppet state.
The satellite.
Exactly, a satellite state, cut off from its allies, Britain and France. Poland's foreign minister, Josef Beck, he had this vision of Poland leading a sort of third Europe bloc, not being subservient to Germany, and joining the anti-Comintern pact. From their perspective, that would just expose them to the Soviets without any real Western backup. It was a non-starter.
So the Polish refusal wasn't just about Danzig or the corridor routes.
Not at all. And crucially, we know now that Germany's intent wasn't peaceful anyway. Hitler wasn't really interested in negotiating over Danzig. His real goal, and he was pretty open about it in internal meetings, was Lebensraum in Osten, living space in the East, securing food supplies.
Right. He actually said something like, Danzig is not the object.
He did. May 23rd, 1939. Danzig is not the object. It is a matter for us of rounding out our living space in the East and securing our food supply. So those offers from Ribbentrop earlier in March, just a diplomatic game.
A feint, basically.
A feint, yeah. Buying time for war preparations, masking the real goal, which was always aggression.
Okay, so if diplomacy was just a cover, Germany needed a reason to attack. This brings us to those claims of Polish provocations, border clashes, the justification Germany used. How much truth is there to that?
Well, this is where the propaganda machine really kicked into high gear. Starting around March 1939, Nazi media just relentlessly pumped out stories about supposed Polish atrocities against ethnic Germans in Poland.
Creating an enemy image.
Precisely. Painting Poland as the aggressor.
Yeah.
Now, were there any border incidents? German police reports did mention some Polish border violations, sure. But these were often minor, disputed, and completely out of proportion to the German reaction and claims. The real story is much darker and involves things like Operation Himmler.
Ah, yes, the staged incidents.
Exactly. Staged border incidents, fingierte Grenzzwischenfälle, organized by Heydrich and Müller from about mid-August 39. The most famous, or infamous, is the Gleiwitz incident on August 31st.
Tell us about that one again.
SS commandos, dressed up as Polish insurgents, attacked the German radio station at Gleiwitz. And to make it look convincing, they brought concentration camp prisoners there, murdered them, and left their bodies dressed in Polish uniforms as proof.
Chilling. And Hitler used this immediately.
Right away. In his big speech to the Reichstag on September 1st, announcing the invasion, he claimed Poland had provoked 14 border incidents the night before. Among them, he said, 3 very serious ones. He meant Gleiwitz and the others.
But it fell apart pretty quickly.
Yeah, the whole thing was apparently quite amateurishly done by the SD. The story didn't hold up, so they actually dropped those specific incidents from their propaganda fairly soon after. But they'd serve their purpose, the immediate pretext for war.
Incredible. So the Polish aggression narrative was just manufactured, a complete fabrication to justify invasion.
Largely, yes. It really shows how propaganda can shape perceptions.
Okay, so if Poland wasn't the aggressor, what about their military? There's that persistent image of, Polish cavalry charging German tanks, the overconfident Poles myth.
Right, that's another powerful piece of propaganda that's lingered. The idea that Polish leaders were arrogant, dreaming of marching on Berlin. It's just not true. It was Nazi spin.
So what was the reality?
The reality was that Polish political and military leaders knew they were at a serious disadvantage. They were acutely aware of their military inferiority compared to Germany.
Can you give us a sense of the disparity?
Sure. Numbers-wise, Poland had maybe 44 divisions, Germany had around 57, and they were generally much better equipped.
And tanks, that's the key image.
Exactly. Germany had about 2,400 modern tanks, Panzer III, even captured Czech tanks, built for blitzkrieg. Poland had around 800, mostly very light tanks like tankettes or older models like the Renault FT. They just didn't have large, modern armored formations.
And the Air Force.
Even starker. Germany had nearly 2,000 modern aircraft, Heinkel 111s, Messerschmitt 109s, Stukas. Poland had maybe 840 planes, mostly older types like the PZL P-11 fighter or the Karish bomber. It wasn't just numbers, it was a huge technological gap.
Facing those odds, what was Poland's actual plan? It couldn't have been offensive.
No, definitely not. Their strategy, Plan Zako, Plan West, was purely defensive. The core idea was to hold critical areas, inflict casualties on the Germans, and essentially buy time.
Buy time for what?
For the Western allies, Britain and France, to launch their own offensive against Germany in the West. The Polish plan depended on that happening, diverting German forces. They also hoped for significant military aid from Britain and France.
But mobilization was an issue, wasn't it? They didn't fully mobilize until the last minute.
That's right. They started a partial mobilization back in March 39, but the full general mobilization, well, Britain and France actually pressured them to delay it, to avoid giving Hitler any excuse, any pretext. The tragic irony is that when Poland finally ordered full mobilization on August 30th, it caused chaos and delays. So when the Germans invaded on September 1st, only about a third of their frontline units were actually fully ready and in position, a critical disadvantage.
And that cavalry charge myth, where did that come from?
The Battle of Krojanty, September 1st. There was a Polish cavalry charge, but they charged German infantry, not tanks. They actually broke the infantry line initially.
Okay, so they were successful at first.
Yes, but then they were caught by surprise by German armored cars, reconnaissance vehicles, essentially, and had to retreat, taking losses. It was that specific incident that German propaganda seized on and twisted into the cavalry charging tank story to make the Polish army look backward and foolish.
Got it. So a kernel of truth, but completely distorted. What about external help? You mentioned they counted on the Allies.
They did. They hoped aid might come through Romania, maybe even the USSR, though relations there were obviously very tense. But then came the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, just days before the invasion, August 23rd.
The non-aggression pact between Hitler and Stalin.
Which had those secret protocols dividing Poland and Eastern Europe between them. That pact was absolutely devastating for Poland. It meant no hope of Soviet help, obviously, and it signaled deep trouble. Poland had also refused transit rights for the Red Army earlier, distrusting Soviet intentions.
So they were isolated.
Completely isolated. The Western Allies did declare war, but their actual military contribution early on was minimal. There was the small Saar offensive by the French, which didn't achieve much, and Britain offered alone about £8 million, but it was far too little, too late.
So, knowing all this, the military inferiority, the delayed mobilization, what was Poland's realistic objective? If victory seemed impossible alone, why fight?
It wasn't about achieving outright victory against Germany on their own. They knew that was highly unlikely without major Allied intervention. The goal was strategic delay.
Hold out for as long as possible.
Exactly. Hold key areas, fight fiercely, inflict losses, and survive long enough, maybe 3 months was the estimate, for that promised Western offensive to begin and change the strategic situation. It was a strategy based on hope and Allied promises.
But that Western offensive never really materialized in time.
No. And then the final blow came on September 17th.
The Soviet invasion from the east.
Yes, acting on those secret protocols of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. That eliminated any possibility of a longer defense or falling back to establish, a guerrilla resistance in the east. Moscow tried to justify it by saying the Polish state had collapsed, but that wasn't legally true. The government escaped and continued in exile.
So the picture that emerges is, well, it's the opposite of the myths. Not provocative, not overconfident, but a nation facing impossible odds, betrayed by pacts, fighting defensively for survival.
That's a much more accurate assessment. Yes, it was an incredibly difficult, tragic situation.
So wrapping this up, what we've really seen today is that the invasion wasn't some simple reaction to Polish actions. It was a premeditated act of aggression by Nazi Germany. They used false pretexts, wielded overwhelming military power, and attacked a country that knew it was vulnerable but fought back courageously anyway.
Right.
And understanding this, separating that myth from the reality, is just so important for getting the origins of World War II right and understanding what the Polish people faced right at the start.
Absolutely. And I think if there's one broader takeaway, it's about how easily narratives can be manipulated by powerful states planning aggression, how pretexts are created, how tensions are exploited. It really forces us, even today, to look critically at official stories, especially in times of crisis, and always ask, what's really going on beneath the surface?